House of Seekers, Episode 3, Soul and Consciousness. Are we just these, physical beings? Or is there something more to us? Like today we're really diving deep into this whole idea that we're on a journey, like developing our souls, and we're always choosing between like higher and lower realities, right? I think this deep dive might actually challenge how we see like what the real world even is.
Yeah, it really is amazing how even with like all the progress science has made, we can't really explain consciousness.
Yeah.
Like how can these neurons firing in our brains actually create the experience of feeling and, just being aware?
Isn't that what they call the hard problem of consciousness? Like science can explain how the brain works mechanically,
Yeah.
but not how we experience things.
Exactly. But what's so interesting is that science is kind of hinting at something deeper, like a reality beyond what we actually see. Take the holographic principle, for example. It suggests that our 3D world might actually just be a projection from a 2D surface.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a hologram, right?
Right, yeah.
Like on a credit card,
Right.
it looks 3D, but the information is actually on a flat surface.
It's like a giant cosmic movie being projected onto a massive screen.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Exactly. And then you've got quantum entanglement. This is where particles can affect each other instantly across huge distances, and it totally goes against everything we thought we knew about space and time. So you see, these concepts suggest that our physical reality, the one we experience every day, may just be one layer of something much, much deeper, something that's all interconnected.
So are you saying that our senses could be like preventing us from seeing the whole picture?
Well, think of our senses like tools, okay?
Right.
They evolved to help us survive. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're showing us, the ultimate truth.
Okay, I see.
Like, imagine those ancient civilizations, right?
Uh-huh.
They thought the world just ended at the horizon because that's literally all they could see.
Makes sense. So if science is hinting at this deeper reality and our senses are kind of limited, are there other ways to understand, like our existence in consciousness?
That's where, these spiritual frameworks can really offer some insight. In the Islamic tradition, for example, they place a lot of emphasis on the qalb.
The qualb.
Yeah, it's the heart. It's seen as the center of true understanding. And it's connected to a reality that's beyond our senses. And then they contrast that with the aql, which is like the intellect, the part of us that processes information. But they see the intellect as a tool of the heart, really.
So it's like our hearts have a deeper understanding than our brains.
Exactly.
Right.
It's kind of like you have this inner knowing, and then your intellect helps you, try to make sense of it.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. And, it makes me think about how, we get so caught up in wanting things like material possessions or chasing after these fleeting desires, always wanting more, but never really feeling satisfied. It's like you're running on this treadmill, but getting nowhere.
Yeah, that's what you might call like the lower reality, the realm of physical sensations and always wanting more, more, more. It feels very real, very dominant, but it can be a trap.
A trap. Oh, wow. So like a gilded cage. We think we're free to go after whatever we want, but that pursuit itself ends up being a form of slavery.
Exactly. It's what some call modern slavery. Consumerism, makes us think we need things we never even knew we needed before. The media shapes what we desire, and technology, while it's convenient, can actually hijack our attention and even start controlling our behavior.
So what's the alternative then? What does true freedom look like in this whole context?
Well, true freedom, I think, lies in cultivating what we might call the higher reality.
Okay.
This is the realm of, eternal values and spiritual growth and really connecting with our deeper selves. It's about understanding the limitations of the material world and, aligning ourselves with something greater. True freedom doesn't come from just giving in to every impulse. It comes from mastering them.
This whole idea of a journey towards freedom, and so intriguing. Is there a way to figure out where we are on this path and, how to actually move forward?
Well, in Islamic thought, the nafs, which is the soul, is said to go through different stages of development. You start with the nafs al-amara. Think of it like the soul that's enslaved by desires and everything outside of you. Think about the last time you just couldn't resist that delicious dessert. That's your nafs al-amara right there. And this is where a lot of us start out, caught in this loop of wanting instant gratification and just constantly chasing those fleeting pleasures.
Wow, that hits close to home. So how do we move past that initial stage?
The next stage is called the nafs al-lawama, the self-reproaching soul. This is where self-awareness starts to kick in. And we start seeing like the negative consequences of our actions and how much our desires actually have a hold on us. It's a wake-up call, realizing that always chasing after more isn't going to bring us true fulfillment. It's that moment when you start to question your choices and really search for something more meaningful. It's the beginning of this inner struggle between the lower and higher realities.
Yeah, and that struggle, oh man, it can be real. But the ultimate goal is to reach what's called the nafs al-mutmainah. It's like the tranquil soul. It's a state of true freedom where we've mastered those desires and we've really aligned ourselves with our higher purpose. We're not driven by those little impulses anymore. It's more about that inner peace and that connection to something way bigger than ourselves.
Wow, that sounds incredible. But how do we actually get there? Are there any, like tools or practices that can help us on this journey toward, the nafs al-mutmainah? That's where these spiritual practices really shine. In Islam, for example, they emphasize things like prayer and fasting, even like conscious consumption. All these practices can help us cultivate that higher reality and kind of weaken the grip of the lower reality.
Okay, so let's dive into those a little bit. How does like prayer, for instance, how does that play a role in this journey toward freedom?
Prayer is really powerful. It's like this tool for breaking free from the hold that material existence has on us. It's a moment where we step outside of that constant stream of thoughts and desires, like disconnecting from all that noise of the modern world and connecting with something bigger, something beyond ourselves.
It's almost like hitting the pause button, on
Yeah.
all the chaos of daily life and remembering what really truly matters. It's interesting how in the modern world we've lost sight of these essential practices, like we've almost been programmed to forget about them.
Yeah, you're right. In modern society, with all its emphasis on like material things and getting what you want right away, it can pull us away from these ancient practices that connect us to our souls. Prayer, at its core, it's like this rebellion against this modern idea that we're nothing more than material beings. It's like saying, hey, there's a higher power out there. There's this deeper reality that we're all part of.
Right. And through prayer, through regular prayer, we're sort of like cultivating that independence from all these passing trends, and we're strengthening our connection to something that's eternal.
Yeah.
That shift in perspective that's essential for developing true freedom.
Yeah.
What about fasting? I always thought of it as like a physical practice, but I mean, I'm guessing it has some deeper implications, right?
Yeah, fasting is about it's about mastering our bodily impulses. It's about breaking free from, being ruled by our desires. In a world that's constantly throwing temptations our way, fasting is like this powerful tool to reclaim our power, to be able to say like no to the demands of that lower reality.
So it's not just about like not eating or drinking. It's about retraining our minds to resist cravings and like all those impulses that often control us. It's like pushing back against the modern world's obsession with consuming and indulging.
Yeah, exactly. By choosing to abstain from things that we need, things we desire, we're demonstrating that we're free from those needs and desires. It's a really powerful way to cultivate like spiritual independence and realize that true sustenance, it comes from a much deeper source. This act of defying the modern world's pressure to constantly consume, it's a deeply spiritual act. It's a way to reconnect with that inner strength.
It's like a boot camp for the soul.
Yeah.
It's training us to be stronger and more resilient in the face of all those temptations that are out there.
Hmm.
Okay, so what about conscious consumption? I mean, that sounds like it's all about being really mindful of what we allow into our lives, both physically and mentally.
You got it. Conscious consumption is really about being aware of what influences us. And then it's about making conscious choices about what we let into our lives. It's about breaking free from like the manipulation of consumerism and all the media that surrounds us. It's constantly bombarding us with messages designed to keep us trapped in that lower reality.
So it's about questioning those messages that tell us we need this or that to be happy, and instead starting to make choices that support our spiritual growth rather than feed our material desires. It's like taking a stand against this modern idea that happiness is all about how much stuff we have.
Exactly. Conscious consumption is realizing that true freedom doesn't come from just having more and more stuff. It comes from freeing ourselves from our attachment to all that stuff. It's a way to reject that obsession with material wealth that's so prevalent in the modern world, and instead embrace a simpler way of life, a way of life that's more meaningful.
It seems like all these practices, prayer, fasting, conscious consumption, they're all about taking back our power, from all those influences of the modern world and aligning ourselves with that higher reality.
That's a great observation. You see, these practices, they've been around for centuries, and they're even more relevant today. They offer this counter-narrative to the modern world's obsession with material things, with individualism, and with getting everything we want instantly. They remind us that true fulfillment, it doesn't come from chasing after fleeting pleasures. It comes from connecting with our souls.
This whole conversation has been so eye-opening. It's like you're giving us a completely new framework for understanding freedom, not just in like a political or social sense, but as a deeply personal spiritual journey. It's almost like a blueprint for resisting the modern world's promises.
Mm.
They're so seductive, but ultimately they're empty.
And the best part is, this journey is open to all of us. Every single moment, we have a choice to make. Are we going to keep going down that path of the lower reality, chasing all those fleeting pleasures and staying enslaved to our desires? Or are we going to choose the path of the higher reality? The path where we cultivate our souls and discover true freedom. It's a choice between conforming to what the modern world dictates or choosing to live a life that's aligned with our true nature.
That's such a powerful way to put it. So it's not about being perfect or, changing our lives overnight. It's about making conscious choices,
Yeah.
moment by moment, choices that align with our deepest values and aspirations.
And remember, you don't have to do this alone. Those spiritual practices and traditions we've been talking about, like the Islamic path, they offer guidance and support along this journey. They give us tools and frameworks that have been around for centuries. They've been tested and refined. They can help us navigate the tough parts and discover the joy of living in a way that's true to ourselves, a way of living that the modern world often tries to bury.
It's like having a map and a compass for this journey, especially when the modern world is constantly throwing distractions at us, trying to tempt us off course.
Exactly. And don't forget, these practices aren't just rituals, they're acts of resistance. A way to take back our true selves from the grip of the modern world. They're a path to liberation, to rediscovering that beauty and power of our souls.
This has been such an insightful conversation, but I feel like we've only scratched the surface of this topic. It's given me so much to think about.
And that's the whole point, right? To spark your curiosity, to challenge those assumptions, and to give you the power to explore these ideas on your own and see what resonates with you.
Absolutely. And I'm sure our listeners are feeling just as inspired as I am. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I have a question. If we accept this idea that we're spiritual beings on this journey of development, constantly making choices between those higher and lower realities, what does that mean for our daily lives? How can we actually put this wisdom into practice, make it real amidst all the busyness and responsibilities and all the distractions pulling us in different directions, especially in today's world where everything seems designed to keep us stuck in that lower reality?
That's a fantastic question, and it's actually one that we'll be diving into in the next part of our discussion. We'll explore how to actually integrate these spiritual principles into our everyday lives, how to navigate the challenges that inevitably pop up, and how to cultivate the resilience and the perseverance we need to stay true to our path, even when we're surrounded by the pressures and temptations of the modern world.
I am so looking forward to that conversation. And for our listeners, I encourage you to take some time to reflect on this question as well. What practices speak to you? What small steps can you take today to shift your focus towards that higher reality and to experience the freedom and fulfillment that comes from connecting with your true self? That self that the modern world tries to tell us isn't real. We'll be back soon to continue this amazing exploration of soul and consciousness. Stay tuned. Welcome back, Seekers.
So we're picking up our exploration of soul and consciousness, and I think the big question is, how do we take these big ideas and actually make them work in our everyday lives? It's easy to feel inspired when we're talking about it, but then real life hits with all those to-do lists and distractions.
That's why it's so important to think of spiritual growth not as this separate thing you do, but as something that's, woven into your life. It's like learning a new language. You wouldn't expect to become fluent just by going to a couple of classes, right?
Right.
You have to practice and use it in your everyday routine. I love that analogy. So how do we start speaking this language of the soul, in our daily lives? It's like the modern world almost makes us forget we even have a soul.
Yeah, the modern world, with its constant focus on speed and efficiency and getting everything now, 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 it can make it tough to nurture that spiritual side of ourselves. One way to kind of push back against that is to turn everyday moments into opportunities for mindfulness. Instead of just going through the motions on autopilot, try bringing your awareness to simple tasks like washing the dishes, folding laundry, even your commute to work. Those can all become little mini meditation sessions if you approach them with presence and intention.
So it's about finding those little pockets of stillness and all the busyness, right? Those moments where we can stop, take a breath, and reconnect with ourselves, even with all the noise of the modern world around us.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be, formal meditation. It could be as simple as paying attention to your breath, noticing the sensations in your body, appreciating the beauty of nature around you. Those little acts of mindfulness help us feel grounded and peaceful amidst the chaos. It's like this powerful reminder that we're not just cogs in a machine, but spiritual beings connected to something so much greater than ourselves.
I've also found that setting intentions at the beginning of the day can be really helpful. It's like setting a compass for your soul, reminding yourself which direction you want to go in, even when life throws you those curveballs.
Oh, intentions are so powerful, especially in a world that's constantly trying to tell us what our values should be. Start your day by reflecting on what truly matters to you. What kind of person do you want to be? How do you want to show up in the world? Write those things down, visualize yourself living them out, and carry those intentions with you throughout your day. It's like, drawing a line in the sand and saying, this is who I am and this is what I stand for.
Yeah, I get that. But what about when things get really tough? Because let's face it, life isn't always easy. How do we stay connected to that higher reality when we're dealing with challenges, setbacks, or even those moments of real despair? It feels like the modern world can almost make those negative feelings even worse. Like it's harder to hold on to our spiritual side when things are rough.
You're right. The modern world can sometimes feel like it's attacking our souls. But it's in those tough times that the practices we've been talking about become even more important. They're like anchors that keep us grounded when the storms of life hit. When things are difficult, prayer can be a source of comfort and strength, a connection to something bigger. Fasting, it teaches us resilience. The ability to keep going even when things are uncomfortable. It reminds us that we're stronger than we think. And contemplation, it helps us make sense of our experiences, helps us find meaning in our struggles even when we're suffering. And don't underestimate the power of helping others. It reminds us that we're not alone and that even in the darkest times, we can still make a positive difference.
It's like building the spiritual toolkit, right? Equipping ourselves with practices that can support us through all those ups and downs that life throws our way. Practices that give us the strength to resist the modern world's pull towards despair.
Exactly. And the more we use these tools, the stronger we get. The easier it becomes to navigate the challenges that pop up. These practices are a way of pushing back, a way to reclaim our inner strength and find peace, even amidst all the chaos of the modern world.
It's also important to remember that spiritual growth isn't like a straight line. There are times when we feel connected and aligned, and then there are times when we feel lost and totally disconnected. It's all part of the journey. But it's easy to forget that in the modern world, with all its demands,
Absolutely. It's like the ocean. You've got waves rising and falling, but underneath it all, there's this deep, constant stillness. Our goal isn't to get rid of the waves, but to learn how to ride them with grace and balance. Knowing that we're always connected to that deeper source of peace, the modern world might tell us that happiness is about what we have, but true peace, it comes from within. It comes from connecting with our souls.
that is such a comforting thought. It's like having this inner compass that always points us back in the right direction, even when we get lost.
And remember, you don't have to go it alone. Having a supportive community, finding wise mentors, connecting with people who share your values, that can make a huge difference. We're not meant to walk this path in isolation. When we find others who are on the same journey, it helps us stay grounded, especially when the modern world is trying to pull us in a different direction.
It's true. There's something really powerful about sharing this journey with others, supporting each other, learning from each other's experiences. It helps us feel like we belong, and it reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles.
And, sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected places. Nature, art, even the kindness of strangers. Be open to wisdom wherever you find it. The modern world tries to narrow our focus, but truth is everywhere if we're willing to see it.
I love that. Staying open and curious, seeing the world as a classroom, every experience, even the tough ones, can be an opportunity to grow.
Exactly. And as you continue on this journey of soul and consciousness, just remember that it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. Celebrate your little victories, learn from your stumbles, and just keep moving forward one step at a time towards becoming the truest, most liberated version of yourself. The modern world values speed, but the journey of the soul, well, that's a marathon, not a sprint.
This deep dive has been incredibly enriching, and I feel like I've learned so much. It's like you've given us this map to navigate the complexities of the modern world and find our way back to who we really are.
It's been my pleasure, and to all our listeners, I'll leave you with this. The journey of the soul is an adventure that lasts a lifetime. Embrace it with courage, curiosity, and an open heart. Remember, true freedom isn't about what's happening around you. It's about awakening your own consciousness. That consciousness that the modern world tries so hard to dim.
Beautifully said. As we wrap up this episode of House of Seekers, I encourage you to keep exploring these ideas. Keep asking those questions. Keep searching for the truth that's within your own heart. That heart that the modern world might have tried to silence. Until next time, may your journey be filled with peace, purpose, and the boundless joy of discovering your true self.